Hey guys, my name is Elle. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be about how I made $75,000 in 3 months as a travel nurse. Okay, for y'all that noticed that I'm holding a bunch of non-US dollars in my thumbnail, do not come for me. I just don't like keep money around. I have pesos. I have 20 pesos, which is like $2 or whatever. Okay, so let's get into how I made all that money. And also don't forget to subscribe, hit the button below. So if you're watching this video, you are probably in one of two groups of people. Either you're in the field, so you're like a nursing student, a new nurse, a seasoned nurse, a travel nurse, etc. Or you're everybody else. And you are just curious as to how nurses are making this kind of money or how travel nurses are making so much. And really, that's okay because it's not a secret. It's not like there's some, you know, backhanded way that nurses are making all this money. It's just the market right now, and it's actually a really great time to become a nurse. So a little background about me. I've been a nurse for 10 years and I have worked in like everywhere. ER, I've done ICU, I've done CVICU, trauma ICU, PACU, pre-op, I did a telephone job, worked from home. I've done like all kinds of random jobs. So I have a lot of random experience, but I have a lot of solid experience as well that has really helped me in the travel nursing world. About 5 years ago, I did some travel nursing, and then I went back to travel nursing last year during COVID. So I was really on the fence about going back to travel nursing anyway, but I really didn't want to be a travel nurse during COVID at first because I just know what it's like. And I was actually working in the ER and it was just so bad. So I said, well, do I really want to put myself through this and, you know, whatnot. But eventually, you know, I came across contracts that were really good. So back when I did travel nursing like 5-ish years ago, the rates were obviously not what they are now during COVID, but they were still higher than what I was making as a staff nurse. And I really couldn't find anywhere that would pay me what I would make as a travel nurse. And I've learned a lot over the years about pay structure, how to make the most of it, how to manage your expenses when you are out there traveling. So there's a lot that goes into it actually being profitable, but in the end also like you really just get the experience. You know, it's not for everybody, but if you are able to venture into travel nursing, I would definitely do it. I'm gonna give you four suggestions to get you to the point where you can make $75,000 in 3 months. And that is a lot of money to a nurse because for some nurses, that's more than your salary. For some nurses, that is your salary or close to it, and you're making that in a fraction of the time. There are, I can tell you so many stories about how different people finagle travel nursing, how I know people that work a staff job and then take contracts with that. So you can only imagine how much money nurses can make. The potential is out there, you just have to want to do the work. The first, very first thing I will tell you when it comes to deciding to be a travel nurse is prepare to become a travel nurse by saving money. There have been many a nurse that I've come across out in the travel nurse world who either get canceled, their contracts fall through, something happens, anything happens, something happens at home even, and they are strapped for money. And that is a huge factor when it comes to your stress level. So what I do is I save up about 6 months worth of money to pay my bills at home. Now, this is obviously not gonna apply to you if you live in your fifth wheel or you are doing the whole van life thing. You don't have those expenses, but I am tied to the expenses that I have. So I know this is the amount I need each month. I'm gonna save up 6 months so that when I'm out there in the travel world, I'm not worried about what is going on at home. I'm not worried about paying my bills at home. With travel nursing, the other thing is you don't necessarily get paid right away. So sometimes you might go a couple weeks or even longer if your company has some kind of issue or they're behind on their pay or whatever. Anything can happen, and it gives you peace of mind to know, oh, I don't need this money right now. I don't need my housing stipend today. I don't need it next week. I don't need it the week after that. I don't need it this month. I can pay for my housing. I can pay all my bills with money that I've saved. If there was anything I was gonna tell you, and if there was any takeaway from this entire video, it is to save money before you go out and try to make all that money, because otherwise you will end up between a rock and a hard place and you'll be super stressed in addition to the stress that you already have at work. The second thing that I would recommend is to get your experience, obviously. My recruiter that I'm working with now, she's very chatty. And I don't know that all recruiters are this chatty. She's really friendly. I mean, I like her. She just like gets into these whole conversations, and I'm not trying to have a 30-minute conversation sometimes, but it's cool. You know, I'm chatty too. We get to talking about what it's like on her end, you know, like what is it like as a recruiter? How is it going out there for you? And, you know, they obviously make money off of getting nurses assignments and contracts. So something her and I talked about was when COVID happened, there were a lot of new grad nurses or nurses with a year of experience that were like, I'm leaving my staff job and I'm going to go travel. And it was really, really difficult for them to find jobs because they only had a year of experience in whatever field, ER, ICU, whatever it might be. If you are the hospital and you're getting 2 resumes and 2 packets for consideration, and you've got a nurse that has a year of experience and you've got a nurse that has 10 years of experience or 20 years of experience and certifications and all this stuff, you're not going to go for your nurse that has a year of experience. And a lot of nurses that were at the bedside for years and they were tired of working at the bedside and they were fed up with their employers left also. So you got a mix of really experienced nurses and really new nurses going into the field. With that being said, you have to be okay with the fact that it's going to be harder for you to find a contract if you only have a year of experience versus if you have 2 years, or maybe if you have a really good year of experience, like a really busy ICU or level 1 trauma ER or something like that. Take into consideration the experience you have in the environment that you're going to get put into, because most of the time, especially during COVID, but most of the time with travel contracts, you're not going to go to a hospital that is like nice, that's not busy, that has staff and all these resources. You're going to go to a hospital, like one contract that pops into the front of my mind. It was you, the nurse, you were the tech, you were the transporter, you were the tube system because the hospital didn't have a tube system. So you had to go take all your labs to lab. You had to go get all of your drugs from pharmacy. It was a mess. You spent so much time away from the patient. It was so frustrating. This was in the ER, by the way, but so to add that stress onto the work that you're already doing as a nurse is really, it can really stress some nurses out. So for me, it wasn't more so like stress, it was more like irritation. Like, why is there not a tube system in this hospital? This is not a small hospital and I don't want to walk this much. But you know, like, it was old and whatever. There are so many things that happen and so many situations in hospitals that you're already going to be stressed working there. You don't want to be more stressed because you don't feel competent or you don't feel confident in your skills. I'm not saying you can't be confident after a year. Maybe you are. Was I? Hindsight, no. Did I think I was? Oh yeah. But there was so much that I did not know when I was a new nurse. And I mean like 2-3 years or so. And honestly, it wasn't until I went to ICU that I felt really, really comfortable in the ER. Take all that with a grain of salt. Everybody is different, but I would just say get your experience, get the best experience that you can, and market yourself as best as you can, because there's competition out there, because people are realizing you can make $75,000 in 3 months and then kind of chill for another 3 months. Okay, the third strategy, suggestion, tip is finding good contracts. So there are different types of contracts out there. There are regular contracts, there are rapid response contracts, crisis contracts. There are even strike contracts if that was something that you were willing to do. So the biggest thing that you can do is negotiate your contracts. So if you're working with one company and one recruiter, you're not doing enough. You need to work with multiple companies and have different recruiters, not in the same company, but have different recruiters with different companies. So I have a list of about 10 companies or so that I've had good experiences with, or other travel nurses that I've talked to have had good experiences with. And so I keep those so that I have a list of companies I can go down, reach out to recruiters, and ask them about contracts, or at least get the information from them. A lot of finding contracts sometimes is just the network that you have. So sometimes it's talking to, you know, your travel nurse that's working with you, like, hey, what company are you with? Oh, do you like your recruiter? Like, what's their name? Give me their info. Having different recruiters with different companies is actually really useful because you can compare the same contract between 2 different companies. Basically, the agency makes a deal with the hospital, gets a contract, takes their amount off the top, and then the rest is broken down into the nurse's contract. So it can vary, sometimes significantly, from company to company. Sometimes you can get other nurses to talk about like how much they make or what their contract rate is, and it's interesting to see that it can vary a lot. And there's a lot of discussion about that on Facebook groups and such. So it always pays to do your research when it comes to finding a contract, as well as working with different companies. And a lot of companies will ask you, are you working with another recruiter? Are you working with someone else? The one thing you don't want to do is get submitted to the same contract by two different companies, because then that will actually not work in your favor. So let me know if you guys actually want a video about finding contracts and tips and tricks for that, because that is also a video in itself, because there's so much that goes into it. But when you have a goal in mind, like say you want to make $50,000 or $75,000 and you have that goal in mind, always keep in mind what your contract amount is, what your hourly rate is, what your per diem is, so that you can reach that goal. And my last and fourth tip for making this kind of money during a travel contract is to pick up extra shifts. I know that kind of sounds like, why is she telling me this? Of course, that makes sense. The more you work, the more you make. However, depending on where you pick up your contract, like say California versus Alabama, the overtime structure is going to be different. So the amount you make is going to be different. But that one extra shift can seriously bump up the amount of money that you make, and it's totally worth doing. My opinion is, and this is the way I think about travel contracts, like I'm leaving my home for 3 months, and it may or may not be somewhere that I want to go. Like maybe I do want to travel to this place or go here. Usually desirable places, and this kind of goes back to finding your contract, but usually desirable places pay a lot lower because they know that people want to come to that city. You're going to find your highest paying contracts in either terrible places to work or these random places to work, like that are rural or out in the middle of nowhere. Not saying that it's a bad place to work, but it's just far away from everything. However, when I take a contract, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be working for 3 months. I may or may not come home. I try to come home like every other week. I don't need to. So when I'm out there, I'm trying to make as much money as I can while also making time for myself and my mental health and everything and taking care of myself. But if I'm able to work, like I'm gonna come to work and work, because after this, I'm not gonna be working. I'm gonna be chilling at home and not thinking about that place ever again. So I say if you sign for 36, try and work 48. If you sign for 48, try and work 60. Most of the time you will be able to work extra. So there's always that potential to pick up shifts. I think it's just about doing a great job, being available, and letting them know that you want to work extra, because sometimes they don't expect travel nurses to want to work more than they're supposed to work. So what everybody wants to know is how I actually did. So I've got some notes to keep myself straight, really. So I took a contract in California, and this was in the middle of COVID, but it wasn't a crisis rate contract. It was just, it really is like higher than normal, because these rates were not around when I was travel nursing before. And I don't think they'll go back down there to that level because the cost of living is so much more now. I worked a 48-hour contract in California, and for those who don't know, California has a different overtime structure. So you get paid overtime each workday since you work 12-hour shifts. So my hourly rate was $88 an hour, and I worked 4 days in a work week. So 88 times 32 is those first 8 hours. That works out to $2,816 per week. And then time and a half for overtime pay is $132, and that's for 16 hours because the 4 hours over each of those 4 days, if you catch my meaning, that came out to $2,112. And then my per diem stipend for the week was $1,050. So total gross was $5,978 a week. And over 13 weeks, that is $77,714. So is that all money that I took home? Of course not. That is my gross income. That's not net. That's not after paying taxes, after expenses. I'm very diligent about keeping track of my expenses. So I actually have a spreadsheet. I set aside money to pay my taxes quarterly. I set a budget for my travel expenses so that I have a net amount that I want to take home at the end of that contract. And obviously things change, expenses, can change. Usually my biggest biggest expense is housing. And it really just depends. Sometimes you get lucky and you find a really nice place for a really good deal, but you know, that can depend. So there's a lot of information in this video. There's a lot of other information that I could add to this video. It would just make it extremely long. So if you are interested in hearing anything more about some of the things that I mentioned, just let me know in the comments below. Hit subscribe so you can get notified of when those videos pop up. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.